The Intergalactic Council had faced many challenges over the centuries: rebellious planets, rogue fleets, and even a few near-extinction events. But none of them had prepared the Council for humans. As the leaders of the most powerful species gathered in the Great Hall, they looked confident. They had the best ships, the most advanced technology, and the smartest strategies. Victory was always theirs, but today, something felt different. "The humans are a problem," said Commander Thalix, a towering alien with sharp, insect-like features. His voice echoed in the enormous chamber. "They are refusing to surrender, even though they are outnumbered and outgunned." The council members murmured in surprise. Surrender was a common practice across the galaxy. Every intelligent species knew when to quit, when to bow before a greater power. It was logical. It was necessary to survive. Council leader XLR, a being with a translucent body that shimmered in the light, waved his hand to quiet the others. "Commander Thalix, how many humans are we talking about? Surely they cannot stand against the full might of the Council." Commander Thalix's mandibles clicked as he pulled up a holographic map. "Their numbers are small. We have surrounded their last stronghold. Earth is under siege." The room filled with a sense of relief. Earth, the humans' home planet, had been a target for months. Now it was nearly in their grasp. "They'll surrender soon enough," said Ambassador Freyla, a graceful alien with wings that shimmered in the air. "They always do, don't they?" Thalix paused, his dark eyes narrowing. "That's the problem. They don't seem to have a surrender protocol." The room went silent. "No surrender protocol?" Xyler repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. "What do you mean?" Thalix pulled up a series of reports. "Our intelligence officers have searched every piece of human communication we've intercepted. Every military document, every signal, every plan. There is no mention of surrender, no protocol for retreat. It seems they don't consider it an option." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. In all their history, they had never encountered a species that didn't know when to stop fighting. Even the fiercest warriors eventually gave in when they faced certain defeat. "Surely, they have to surrender when faced with complete destruction," said General Zog, a hulking, reptilian creature with a deep growl. "No species would fight to the last." Thalix shook his head. "Not the humans. They have been fighting without rest, without retreat, and without fear. Every time we think they're on the verge of collapse, they push back harder." Council leader Exiler frowned, deep in thought. "Perhaps they are waiting for an opportunity. Some sort of strategy we haven't considered." Thalix sighed. "If they are, we haven't found it. They've refused every peace offer we've sent. They only have one message for us: we do not surrender." The words echoed in the chamber, leaving the council members feeling unsettled. The idea of a species that didn't know how to quit was not just strange, it was terrifying. If the humans didn't surrender, what would they do? Fight until they were all dead? Destroy their own planet just to spite the council? "They must be bluffing," Ambassador Freyla said, trying to break the tension. No species would willingly walk into extinction, but the others weren't so sure. "We can't underestimate them," said Commander Thalix. "They've already done things we didn't expect. Their strategies are unpredictable. Their technology is more advanced than we realized. They may be weaker in numbers, but they are dangerous." Council leader XLR leaned back in his chair, his translucent skin glowing faintly as he considered the situation. "Then we have no choice but to end this quickly. If they won't surrender, we will force their hand." The council agreed. They would launch a full-scale attack on Earth, using their most powerful fleet. The humans would have no choice but to surrender or be completely wiped out. Far away, on the blue planet that had caused so much trouble for the Council, the humans were preparing for what they knew would be the final battle. The sky above Earth was filled with the silhouettes of massive alien ships, their weapons charged and ready to fire. But the humans weren't afraid. General Sarah Mitchell stood on the command deck of Earth's last standing battle station, her hands resting on the control panel as she looked at the alien fleet through the large windows. The situation was grim, but her expression was calm. "They're coming for us," said Captain Renzo, standing beside her. His voice was tense, but there was a spark of determination in his eye. This is it. They think they can make us surrender. Sarah smiled faintly. They don't understand us at all, do they? The captain chuckled, shaking his head. No, they don't. Behind them, the crew of the battle station worked in silence, their faces set with the same grim determination. The humans had known this day would come. They had seen the Council's forces growing, seen the alien ships blocking their escape routes. There was no way out. But surrender? That was never an option. We don't have a surrender protocol, Sarah said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. We fight. That's what we do. Captain Renzo nodded. And if we go down fighting. Sarah turned to the crew, her voice rising with the kind of authority that made people listen. This is our last stand, people. The Council thinks they can scare us into giving up. But they don't know who they're dealing with. We're human. We never surrender. Remember that. The crew responded with a quiet but firm, "Yes, ma'am," and continued preparing for the incoming battle. Weapon systems were checked and double-checked, defensive shields were reinforced, and every soldier knew their role. The aliens might have had superior technology and larger numbers, but the humans had something else: an unbreakable will. Back in the council chambers, the leaders watched their fleet approach Earth with growing confidence. They believed the humans would see the overwhelming force and finally accept defeat. But as the battle drew closer, they would soon learn just how big their mistake had been. Humans didn't surrender. The fleet from the Intergalactic Council hung in the sky above Earth like a dark cloud. Dozens of massive alien ships floated in formation, their weapons primed and ready. Inside the Council's warships, officers and soldiers prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory. They had more ships, better technology, and greater numbers. This should have been a simple operation. But things weren't going to go as planned. Down on Earth, humans were preparing too. The final orders had been given. The battle would start soon. In the main command center, General Sarah Mitchell stood in front of a large holographic display, showing the positions of the alien fleet. She glanced around at her officers, who were busy at their stations, and then turned to Captain Renzo. "They're almost in range," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. Captain Renzo nodded, eyes fixed on the display. "They'll hit us hard, General. Their firepower is way beyond ours." Sarah didn't flinch. "We've got something they don't. We know how to fight when our backs are against the wall. And we never surrender." The tension in the room was thick, but not from fear. The humans were determined. They knew what they were up against, but giving up was never an option. Each soldier, each officer, knew that today would be a defining moment in human history. The Alien Council thought they could break humanity with superior firepower. They were wrong. Above the planet, the Council's commander Thalix watched the humans' last defenses on his ship's display. He was confident, as were his officers. Earth was within their grasp. All they needed was a final push. "Prepare to engage," Thalix ordered, his deep voice carrying authority. "Once we begin, the humans will have no choice but to surrender." His officers followed the command without hesitation. The battle had been carefully planned. They would overwhelm Earth's defenses in one coordinated strike. It was a foolproof strategy. "Shields up." "Weapons charged," said one of Thalix's senior officers. Thalix leaned forward, watching the display closely. "Fire at will." The first barrage from the Council's fleet came without warning. Massive energy beams fired from the alien ships, striking at Earth's orbital defenses with deadly precision. Several human satellites and defense stations exploded instantly, reduced to flaming debris. But Earth wasn't defenseless. "Fire back," Sarah ordered from the command center. Within moments, Earth's remaining battle stations unleashed their own attacks. Bright beams of light shot through space, targeting the alien ships. Some found their marks, crashing into the Council's vessels and causing explosions. Others missed, disappearing into the vastness of space. The battle was on. Inside one of the Council's warships, alarms began to blare as human fire struck. Commander Thalix looked up in surprise as one of the ships in his fleet was hit hard. It rocked under the impact, flames bursting from its side. "How are they doing this?" One of his officers shouted. Their technology should be no match for ours. Thalix gritted his teeth. He hadn't expected this much resistance. It's human stubbornness, he growled. They refused to accept defeat. He watched as more of his ships came under fire. The humans were fighting back fiercely, far more fiercely than he had anticipated. Every time he thought they were close to victory, the humans would regroup and launch another attack. They won't stop, Thalix muttered, his eyes narrowing. They really don't know how to surrender. On the surface of Earth, soldiers were holding their positions in underground bunkers and fortresses, watching the battle unfold on screens. They knew the situation was dire, but they also knew that giving up wasn't in their nature. We're not going down without a fight, said Sergeant Michaels as he loaded his rifle, speaking to his squad of soldiers. Let them throw everything they've got at us. We're still standing. His words were met with determined nods from his team. These were ordinary people, engineers, factory workers, scientists now turned soldiers. They were tired, worn out from months of war, but their spirits hadn't broken. They had a simple message for the invaders. Earth wasn't going down without a fight. As the battle raged above, humans on the ground prepared for the worst. They knew that if the orbital defenses fell, the aliens would start targeting cities. Civilians were being evacuated to underground shelters, but there wasn't much time. General Sarah Mitchell knew the stakes. She stood in the command center, watching every move, calculating every response. Earth was losing ships and stations fast, but the humans were hitting back hard, taking down alien vessels whenever they could. Focus all fire on their command ships, she ordered. If we can take out their leadership, we might have a chance. Meanwhile, in one of the alien command ships, the crew was in disarray. Despite their advanced technology, they were losing ships at an alarming rate. Every time they destroyed one of Earth's stations, the humans would retaliate with a counterstrike. The alien officers were starting to feel fear, something they hadn't expected from this battle. We're losing ships faster than predicted, one of Thalix's officers reported, panic in his voice. The humans are targeting our main vessels. Thalix slammed his fist on the console. How are they doing this? Their technology is inferior. They're fighting with everything they have, the officer replied. They're not holding back. Thalix gritted his teeth. He had underestimated the humans, thinking that overwhelming firepower would break them. But he was starting to realize that humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't give up, and they didn't run. They fought until they had nothing left. In space, Earth's forces continued to hammer the Council's fleet. Human pilots maneuvered their smaller, more agile ships through the enemy's lines, dodging alien fire and launching surprise attacks on their larger ships. The aliens were caught off guard by the humans' daring tactics. Captain Renzo, leading one of the human fighter squadrons, flew his ship with precision, weaving between enemy ships and launching missiles at key targets. His voice crackled over the comms as he gave orders to his squad. Stay close, don't give them a clear shot, Renzo said, his voice steady. We're hitting their command ships. Follow my lead. His squad responded immediately, flying in formation behind him. They knew the odds were against them, but they had the element of surprise. The alien fleet was powerful, but it wasn't prepared for the humans' aggressive and unpredictable tactics. As Renzo's squadron dived toward one of the Council's command ships, they unleashed a barrage of missiles. The command ship's shields flared brightly as they absorbed the impact, but the sustained assault was too much. A massive explosion ripped through the alien ship, sending debris flying into space. Commander Thalix watched in horror as one of his command ships was destroyed. His confidence, which had been unshakable at the start of the battle, was now crumbling. These humans, they're relentless, he whispered. They won't stop. For the first time in his long career, Thalix felt the icy grip of fear. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. As the battle continued to rage, it became clear to both sides that this was no ordinary war. The humans had no intention of surrendering, no matter the odds. And the Council, for all its strength, was starting to understand that they had made a grave mistake. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their right to exist, and they weren't going to stop until the last alien ship was destroyed. The once proud fleet of the Intergalactic Council was now struggling. Ships that had once dominated the skies over countless worlds were being torn apart by Earth's defenses and human ingenuity. What should have been an easy victory was quickly turning into a nightmare for Commander Thalix and his forces. I in the Council's main warship. Tension filled the air. Officers scrambled from station to station, shouting orders, but nothing seemed to be going according to plan. Alarms blared constantly, signaling the damage that was being inflicted upon their ships. Commander Thalix stood at the center of the command bridge, his fists clenched as he stared at the holographic display. His once confident expression was now filled with frustration. "We're losing too many ships," one of his officers reported, trying to keep calm. "The humans are attacking our command vessels. We can't hold them off much longer." Thalix's jaw tightened. "How are they managing this? We're supposed to have superior technology. They should be surrendering by now." But that was the problem. The humans didn't have any surrender protocol. Thalix had never encountered a species like this before. No matter how many losses they suffered, no matter how powerful the Council's fleet was, the humans kept fighting back. And it was starting to work. "We need to regroup," Thalix said, his voice heavy with frustration. "Pull the damaged ships back and focus fire on their main defense stations." Back on Earth, the command center was buzzing with activity. General Sarah Mitchell watched the battle unfold on the large screen, her sharp eyes tracking every move of the alien fleet. Despite the heavy losses Earth had taken, there was a glimmer of hope. The humans were holding their ground. Captain Renzo stood next to her, his face lit up with the glow of the screen. "We've taken down more of their command ships than we thought possible," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "They're starting to pull back." Sarah nodded, but didn't allow herself to relax. "That means they're desperate. Desperate enemies are dangerous." The Council was beginning to feel the pressure, but the humans knew the fight was far from over. Sarah turned to her team, issuing orders quickly. "Prepare for their next attack. Reinforce the remaining stations and keep our fighters in the air. We can't let up now." The humans had fought with everything they had, and now they were starting to gain the upper hand. But Sarah knew that the aliens wouldn't go down easily. If the Council was truly desperate, they might try something reckless. Commander Thalix paced back and forth on the bridge of his warship, trying to think of a solution. They couldn't keep losing ships at this rate. If the battle continued, they would be forced to retreat, a humiliating outcome for the mighty Council. "We can't afford to lose," Thalix muttered under his breath. "We have to end this now." One of his senior officers, a gray-skinned alien with sharp eyes, approached. "Commander, I have an idea. If we can't break through their defenses, we may have to use drastic measures." Thalix looked up, his brow furrowing. "What are you suggesting?" The officer hesitated for a moment, then spoke quietly. "The Omega Protocol, Commander. We could deploy it on one of their major cities. That might force them to surrender." Thalix's eyes widened. The Omega Protocol was a last resort weapon, designed to obliterate an entire planet if necessary. It wasn't meant for use against a single species like humans, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "If we use the Omega Protocol, we risk total destruction of the planet," Thalix said, his voice low. "But it might be our only chance." His mind raced. Using such a weapon would break every ethical code the Council had ever established. But this wasn't just about ethics anymore. It was about survival, his survival, and the survival of the Council's reputation. Thalix made his decision. "Prepare the weapon. Target one of their largest cities. We'll show these humans what real power looks like." On Earth, the tension was building. The humans had managed to push back the Council's forces, but everyone knew the aliens wouldn't give up so easily. Inside the command center, Sarah and Renzo were going over the latest battle reports when a new alert flashed on the screen. "General, we're detecting unusual energy signatures coming from one of the alien ships," an officer reported. Sarah frowned. "What kind of signatures?" The officer shook his head, his face pale. "I don't know, but it's nothing like we've seen before. It's massive, way beyond anything their normal weapons could produce." A cold chill ran down Sarah's spine. She turned to Renzo, who looked equally concerned. "They're planning something big," she said. something that could wipe us out. Without wasting a second, Sarah started issuing orders. Prepare all remaining defenses. Evacuate the major cities immediately. We need to be ready for whatever they're about to throw at us. Renzo nodded and relayed the commands, his voice steady but tense. The entire planet was now on high alert. Civilians were being rushed into underground shelters, and military units were bracing for impact. Whatever the Council had planned, it was going to be devastating. Meanwhile, on the Council's flagship, the Omega Protocol was being activated. A massive weapon, hidden deep within the bowels of the ship, was slowly coming online. Engineers and scientists worked quickly, following Thalex's orders without question. They knew what the weapon was capable of, but they also knew the stakes. Thalex watched as the weapon powered up, its energy levels rising to unprecedented heights. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the decision he had made. If this worked, the humans would finally surrender. If it didn't, there might not be an Earth left to conquer. Target acquired, one of the officers reported, their voice shaking slightly. Thalex took a deep breath. Fire! On Earth, the sky suddenly lit up as the alien weapon was fired. A massive beam of energy shot toward one of Earth's largest cities, cutting through the atmosphere like a blade of light. Alarms blared across the command center as the humans watched in horror. Impact in 30 seconds! The officer shouted, his voice filled with fear. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. We need to intercept it. Now, the humans scrambled to respond, launching every defense they had at the incoming beam. Anti-missile systems, energy shields, and even desperate last-ditch efforts to deflect the weapon were deployed. The air was thick with tension as the beam drew closer and closer to the city. For a moment, it seemed like nothing could stop it. The weapon was too powerful, too advanced for Earth's defenses. But then, in a last burst of energy, the humans' defensive grid managed to weaken the beam just enough. The energy blast hit the city, but instead of wiping it out completely, it caused a massive explosion on the outskirts, sparing millions of lives. Commander Thalex stared at the display in disbelief. His ultimate weapon had failed. The humans had survived again. They stopped it, one of his officers whispered, stunned. Thalex's mind raced. He had thrown everything at the humans, and still they refused to surrender. Desperation clawed at his mind. For the first time in his long career, he realized that the Council might lose this battle. Back on Earth, the humans had narrowly avoided disaster. General Sarah Mitchell stood in the command center, her body tense but her mind sharp. They tried to destroy us, she said quietly, her voice filled with resolve. But we're still here. And now, it's our turn. The battle for Earth had reached its breaking point. The once clear skies were now filled with smoke, debris, and flashes of light from the ongoing war. Despite the odds, the humans still stood, battered but unbroken. They knew this would be the most critical moment, their final stand. Inside the Earth Defense Command Center, General Sarah Mitchell was briefing her team. Her voice, steady and calm, echoed through the room, but the weight of the situation hung heavily in the air. We've taken heavy damage, but we're not done yet, she said, her eyes sharp and focused. The Council's fleet is regrouping, and they're preparing for one last major assault. If we don't hold them off, Earth is finished.